She told me, "You have no rights over me," and laughed behind my back thinking I'd never leave. What she didn't know, I wasn't just walking away, I was taking the entire script with me. I used to think trouble in a marriage came loud. Fights, slammed doors, maybe someone yelling about forgotten anniversaries or late nights out. But mine started quiet. So quiet I didn't even notice it at first. Jenna and I had been married for 6 years. We weren't perfect, but we laughed. We shared a rhythm. Our rituals were small but meaningful. Watching crime shows on Thursdays, weekend breakfasts, checking in during lunch breaks. That rhythm started to falter. Slowly, subtly. At first, I chalked it up to life. Work stress, exhaustion. We all go through phases, right? She started pulling away physically at first. No more quick kisses goodbye. No more leaning in during movies. I'd reach for her hand and feel her fingers barely respond, then slip away. It stung, but I told myself not to make a big deal. One night, I tried to hug her in bed. Not in a desperate way, just something simple. She went stiff, like I'd crossed a line. That was new. I pulled back, confused. She rolled over and said in a flat voice, "You have no rights over me." Not angry, not hurt, just cold. "What does that even mean?" I asked, sitting up. She didn't look at me. "We're married. That doesn't make me yours. You don't get to expect anything from me. Not intimacy, not affection." I didn't know what to say. I just sat there, stunned, while she scrolled through her phone like we hadn't spoken. She fell asleep minutes later. I didn't. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, wondering where the woman I married had gone. The next morning I made her coffee. She took it, said thanks, and walked off. No eye contact, no warmth, just motion. I spent the next few weeks pretending things weren't falling apart, pretending the silence wasn't louder than any argument. I made her favorite dinner, salmon with dill butter. She barely touched it and said she had emails to send. I booked us a weekend in the mountains. She canceled. "Too much going on," she said. I offered counseling. She said she didn't need help. I just needed to learn boundaries. Boundaries, that became her favorite word. It wasn't a request, it was a weapon. She stopped saying goodnight. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom. I'd crash on the couch more often than not, staring at the ceiling, listening to her footsteps pacing upstairs. It didn't feel like a marriage anymore. It felt like I was squatting in someone else's house. I kept thinking, this is just a phase. Every couple hits rough patches. I tried to remember the good stuff. Our wedding vows, the road trip to Oregon, the paper flowers she made me on our first date. I thought if I held on long enough, she'd come back to me. Then one night, I heard her voice from the kitchen while I lay awake. She thought I was asleep. She was on the phone. "No, I'm not worried," she said, laughing softly. "He doesn't have the guts to leave. He still thinks he can fix me." That broke something in me. Not out of anger, but realization. She wasn't distant because of stress. She wasn't trying to work through anything. She was done, and she didn't respect me enough to say it. Worse, she was counting on me staying. I didn't storm in. I didn't confront her. I just lay there staring into the dark, letting her words replay in my head. The fridge hummed, the clock ticked, and I saw everything clearly for the first time in months. The next morning, I left the house early, sat in my car for 20 minutes before calling someone I hadn't talked to in a while. Brian, my college buddy, he went into family law. "You still taking clients?" I asked. "Yeah," he said cautiously. "You okay, man?" "I think I need to file something. Maybe an annulment." He paused. "You sure?" "No," I admitted, "but I'm ready to start." That was the beginning, not of the end, but of the shift. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was planning, not to win, not to get even, just to survive. Brian didn't ask for the whole story. That's one of the reasons I called him. He just listened while I explained the basics. Jenna's coldness, her distancing, the phone call that finally opened my eyes. He took notes and nodded like he'd seen this before. Then he asked something I hadn't considered. "Do you think she's trying to get you to leave?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "Some people don't want to be the one to file, so they provoke the other person. That way they can play victim and avoid blame." That hit hard. I'd spent months blaming myself, thinking I wasn't doing enough. But what if that was the plan? What if all this wasn't just emotional drift, but a strategy? I left Brian's office with a stack of paperwork and a deadline. For the next few days, I went through the motions. I didn't pretend we were okay, just didn't announce anything yet. Jenna didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did and assumed I was finally respecting her space. Then came the night I told her. She walked in, dropped her bag by the door. I looked up from the couch and said, "I'm filing for annulment. The paperwork's already started." She stood frozen for a second. "You're not serious." "I am." She stepped closer, her tone shifting. "You think you're going to end this on your terms?" "I'm not ending anything," I said. "You already did. I'm just making it official." Her expression changed. Not shock, not sadness, calculating. "You won't go through with it," she said. "You're angry. You'll calm down. You always do." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her, and something about that silence hit harder than any speech. The smirk vanished. "Fine," she muttered, grabbing her bag again. "Do what you want." She left without another word, and for the first time in months I felt something like peace. But that wasn't the end. It was just her opening move. Over the next few days, the mood in the house shifted, but not the way I expected. She didn't push back, didn't yell or cry. Instead, she turned oddly sweet. She started making small talk again. Casual smiles, humming while making coffee. One morning, she was even curled up on the couch in one of my old t-shirts, the kind she used to wear when things were good. "Do you remember that bed and breakfast in Asheville?" she asked, not looking at me. "Yeah," I said carefully. "The one with the lemon pancakes," she added with a smile. I nodded. She looked at me for a beat, then looked away. It was subtle, but I knew exactly what she was doing. Later that night, she sat next to me during a movie. Her hand brushed my leg when she reached for the remote. She laughed at my jokes again, kissed my cheek before heading out in the morning. If I hadn't known what I knew, I might have believed her. I might have thought we were reconnecting. But none of this came from love. It was performance. She wasn't trying to fix the marriage. She was trying to rewrite the story. I kept my distance, but played along. Warm, polite, guarded. Then I noticed the details. Her phone never left her hand. Always face down. Notifications off. Password changed. Her laptop disappeared the second I walked into a room. Her schedule was suddenly packed with errands and appointments, and she started talking about the image. Not the marriage, not the relationship. The image. "You know how this will look," she said one night, folding laundry like it was a job interview. "People will think something happened, like one of us cheated, or like we weren't stable." She looked at me, holding eye contact longer than usual. "Right," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Wouldn't want that." She smiled like we were on the same page, like we were teammates again. But inside I was boiling. She didn't care about me. She cared about control, and the annulment wrecked her script. You can't play the victim when you didn't even file first. That's when I started digging. I didn't want to. I wanted to be done. But the way she flipped so suddenly, back to sweet Jenna, made my gut twist. It wasn't just about saving face. It felt premeditated. I checked what little access I had left to her emails. Most had been wiped. Then I found one that hadn't been deleted, from her friend Talia. Months ago. Subject: keep records, don't confront. That's when I knew. This wasn't a reaction. It was a setup. She had been preparing for this. Maybe even before I realized something was wrong. What she said, what she wore, what she deleted. It wasn't emotional chaos. It was a campaign. That's when I called Logan. We hadn't talked in years. He used to do freelance cybersecurity back in college. Smart, discreet, owed me a favor. "Think you can help me dig into a locked iCloud backup?" I asked. "Absolutely," he said. No hesitation. We met at a quiet bar. Logan brought his tablet and within 20 minutes pulled down an archive. Jenna thought no one would ever see. Deleted messages, voice memos, notes, even her fake emotional abuse logs. At first it was just messages with Talia. Venting, complaining. Then I hit a voice memo that made my skin go cold. "If I push him far enough, he'll snap. I'll record it. Just need one clip of him yelling, getting aggressive. I've already talked to Kendra's lawyer. If I can prove emotional intimidation, I can claim distress, get alimony. Another message. Let him file first, then I'll flip it. Say he pressured me. Courts eat that stuff up. There were more. A fake diary, drafts of abuse claims, timestamps, arguments that never happened. It wasn't just betrayal, it was premeditated character assassination, and she almost pulled it off. Almost. I left the bar with a flash drive in my pocket and a stomach full of acid. The contents were worse than I'd imagined. Voice memos, fake abuse logs, messages between Jenna and her friend, where they laid out her entire plan like it was a business strategy. She hadn't just fallen out of love. She hadn't just drifted. She had been orchestrating my collapse. The recordings were clinical, her voice calm and calculating, describing how she'd push me until I snapped. Then she'd record it, use it to prove emotional intimidation, build a case for alimony and a clean break. She wasn't just anticipating a fight, she was baiting one, fabricating entire arguments in a diary with timestamps, stories of slammed doors, shouted insults, accusations of worthlessness, all fiction, and I almost gave her the moment she needed. That night I overheard her on the phone. I could have confronted her, demanded answers, shouted, maybe even cried. If I had, she would have been ready. A quick recording, a tearful call to a friend, one shaky video clip labeled proof. I realized something terrifying. She wasn't planning for divorce. She was staging a case for court. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, laptop open, scanning through every document Logan had pulled. She'd even written scripts, phrases she'd claim I said to her. She'd created a version of me that didn't exist, but one convincing enough to hold up in front of a judge. In that version, I was angry, manipulative, unstable. And worse, I could see how someone might believe it. The next morning, Jenna was humming in the kitchen again, light, effortlessly pleasant. She kissed my cheek as she left for work. If I hadn't heard those recordings, I would have second-guessed myself. Thought maybe we were healing, but I knew what she was doing. She was resetting the scene, painting herself as the loving wife who wanted to make it work while I, by filing, became the one who gave up. I needed a plan. I couldn't just drop the files in court and hope the truth spoke for itself. She was too good at twisting narratives. She was going to fight for control of the story until the last possible second. So I set a trap. I called Jenna that afternoon and told her I'd booked a counseling session. Neutral ground. I said maybe we owed it to ourselves to talk with someone in the room. No commitments. Just a conversation. She jumped at the idea. Her response was immediate, eager. She said it was the right thing to do. Even if we don't fix things, it shows we tried, she said. It was exactly the opening she wanted, to appear reasonable, composed, emotionally mature. What she didn't know was that the counselor wasn't a therapist. He was a legal mediator, and sitting beside him would be my attorney, Brian. We scheduled the meeting 3 days out. In those 3 days, I stayed calm, detached. Jenna seemed to soften more with each passing moment. More smiles, more small touches, more carefully placed memories from better times. It was all part of the script. But now I was reading ahead. The day of the meeting, we drove together. She dressed deliberately, relaxed, approachable, like she was ready for a fresh start. She talked the entire ride about how this showed maturity, how we could handle things with dignity. If I hadn't known the truth, it would have sounded sincere. We pulled into a quiet office complex. She didn't ask any questions as we entered the building. No hesitation when we stepped into the glass-walled conference room. Marcus, the mediator, stood and greeted us. Jenna smiled politely and took a seat. Then Brian stepped in. Her smile flickered. "What is this?" she asked, looking between the three of us. I sat down across from her. "It's time for transparency." Marcus nodded. "We're here today to review intentions, concerns, and digital documentation related to the dissolution of your marriage." She blinked once, twice. "I don't understand." I opened the folder in front of me. Inside were printed transcripts of the voice memos, the fake diary entries, screenshots of her messages, all of it. On top, Logan's forensic certification, Proof the files came from her encrypted iCloud backup. "These are fake," she snapped, voice rising. Marcus didn't flinch. "They were retrieved from your personal iCloud archive, authenticated by an independent specialist. Would you like to dispute the origin?" She went quiet. "You didn't drift," I said. "You executed a plan. You tried to frame me. You built a version of me you could use in court." She tried again. "This isn't fair. You manipulated—" "No," I interrupted. "You did. And now you're going to sign a settlement that ends this cleanly. No alimony, no shared assets, no legal claims." Brian slid the papers across the table. "If you don't," he added, "we take it to court, with everything we've got." Jenna stared at the papers, then at me. "You said I wouldn't have the guts," I said quietly, "and you were right, until now." She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She left with a blank expression and shaking hands. That was the moment I took back control, not with anger, not with confrontation, but with clarity. She thought she could rewrite the story, but I changed the ending before she ever saw it coming. And I did it without becoming the man she hoped I'd become. After the meeting, the house turned quiet. Not awkward, not cold, just still. Jenna didn't speak about what happened. She moved around as if nothing had shifted, but her posture was different. No more smiles, no humming. She didn't try to charm me anymore. I didn't provoke her. I didn't gloat. I stuck to simple interactions, polite, distant, clear. The signed documents were with Brian. The process had begun. Legally, we were just waiting, but emotionally, she was scrambling. I could see it. She stayed home more often now, skipped her usual errands. Her phone activity slowed. She didn't check it constantly. Either she knew she was already exposed or she was trying to figure out her next move. Then came the pivot. One afternoon, she knocked on the doorframe of my home office and asked if we could talk. I said, "Sure." "I was angry," she said. "I was scared. That doesn't excuse what I did, but I wasn't thinking clearly." I didn't answer. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she added. Still, I said nothing, because there was nothing to say. I think maybe I sabotaged things because I didn't know how to ask for help. She was fishing, not for reconciliation, but for redemption. She wanted me to meet her halfway so she could walk away with some part of the story intact. "You knew what you were doing," I finally said, "and you planned it." She looked at the floor. "I was trying to survive." "No," I replied. "You were trying to win." She left the room quietly. That was the last real conversation we had. After that, she shifted into another mode. Controlled withdrawal. No more appeals. No more apologies. She stayed out of my way and began making arrangements to leave the house. That suited me fine, but I stayed alert. People like Jenna didn't walk away without a fallback plan. A week later, I got a call from Brian. "She's hired a new attorney," he said. "What for?" "She already signed." "She's claiming she signed under duress, says you blindsided her, that she didn't have legal representation in the room." I exhaled slowly. Of course she is. "But we're fine," Brian added. "We documented everything. She accepted the terms voluntarily, and the recording from the session proves she knew exactly what was happening." He was right. Marcus had recorded the mediation session, per standard policy. Every word was archived, including Jenna's agreement to proceed without counsel. She'd even joked, "I don't need a lawyer to tell me how to let go." Now that line was working against her. Jenna's new lawyer filed a formal motion to stall the annulment. Brian responded immediately, attaching every file: voice memos, metadata, the iCloud extraction report, the fake diary, the audio recording from the mediation. It was overkill but deliberate. The response worked. 3 days later, Jenna's attorney withdrew the challenge. She didn't file another. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing joyful about it, just relief. But the fallout wasn't over. One of our mutual friends, Rachel, reached out. She asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed. Rachel had always been neutral, close enough to Jenna to hear her side, but smart enough not to pick one without hearing both. Over coffee, she didn't waste time. "I saw the stuff," she said. "Not the files, but the aftermath. Jenna's story changed 3 times in a week. First, she said you abandoned her. Then she said you bullied her into signing. Then she claimed she was the one who initiated everything." I sipped my drink and waited. She's spinning out, Rachel continued. She expected you to fight, to yell. She's still trying to explain why none of that happened. She planned for a version of me that never showed up, I said. Rachel nodded. She underestimated quiet resolve. I appreciated that. It wasn't a victory speech, just an acknowledgement of the truth. Eventually, Jenna moved out. She didn't leave a note. No final conversation, no dramatics, just packed her things and disappeared. I stayed in the house, changed the locks, reset passwords, cleaned everything she left behind, digitally and physically. Then I began rebuilding, not with a rebound, not with revenge, but with structure. I went back to therapy, not for the marriage, but for myself. I needed to unpack everything, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the slow erosion of trust. My therapist said something early on that stuck. You didn't lose her. You lost the illusion she let you believe in. That hit harder than I expected, because deep down, I knew it was true. The woman I thought I married had been gone for a long time. Maybe she never existed. The calls from mutual friends slowed. Some sided with her, others faded out of politeness. I didn't chase anyone. People who knew me stayed. That was enough. And the story, our story, stayed quiet. I didn't post about it. I didn't share files. I didn't defend myself on social media. Let her tell whatever version she wanted. I had nothing to prove anymore. The truth didn't need a spotlight. It just needed to stay intact. And it was. It's been a year. The paperwork is final. No more delays. No more surprises. Jenna didn't try to contest anything after her lawyer backed out. She vanished from my life as swiftly as she tried to dominate it. The house is quieter now. Not in the way it used to be, where silence meant tension, distance, avoidance. This quiet is different. It's peace. I've thought about what could have happened if I hadn't acted when I did. If I'd taken the bait. If I'd raised my voice during one of those late-night arguments, pushed back emotionally instead of walking away. Just one wrong move, one slip, would have changed the entire outcome. That's what stayed with me the most. How fragile justice can be when lies are engineered with precision. How easily a truth can be drowned by timing and manipulation. But I didn't give her that. I stayed still. I watched, I listened, then I acted. Not with emotion, but with intent. And that made all the difference. I didn't win by outmaneuvering her. I didn't win because I had better lawyers or smarter friends. I won because I refused to become the version of me she needed for her story to work. There's a line from the voice memo I'll never forget. Jenna's voice, steady and sure. If he files, I'll reverse it. Then I'll say he tried to force me into giving up my rights. She didn't want freedom. She wanted control. Not just over the marriage, but over the narrative. And when I took that away, when I filed first, everything unraveled for her. Now, people sometimes ask why I didn't go public, why I didn't expose her completely, post the recordings, drag her name through the mud. The answer is simple. I didn't need to. Exposing her would have validated her narrative, that I was vindictive, obsessed, incapable of moving on. It would have made me part of the conflict she created. Instead, I chose distance. And distance killed the story faster than exposure ever could. The friends who mattered stuck around. They knew who I was before any of this started. They knew I wasn't the person Jenna tried to fabricate. Others, they drifted. Some still talk to her. I don't care. Let them believe what they want. Truth doesn't always need a crowd to be valid. Sometimes it just needs to be protected. What I've learned most from all this is how subtle manipulation can be, how easily trust can be weaponized, how words like boundaries and space can be used to deflect, isolate, and control when said by someone not acting in good faith. Not every toxic relationship is explosive. Some are slow burns, strategic, quiet, deliberate. The signs weren't loud. They were subtle, pulling away without reason, withholding affection while still expecting loyalty, deflecting accountability by turning concern into accusations, planning an exit strategy while pretending to work things out. When I finally recognized those patterns, it wasn't too late. I still had my sanity. I still had my integrity. And most importantly, I had the receipts. If I had waited, hoping things would magically get better, I'd be telling a very different story, one where I was the one accused, the one defending myself in court against fabricated timelines and rehearsed witnesses, the one stripped of dignity, reputation, and maybe even basic rights. So I walked away early, but with purpose. Not because I stopped loving her, but because I finally understood she didn't love me, and hadn't for a long time. Today, my life is quiet, and that's exactly how I want it. I've rebuilt slowly, new routines, new goals, new peace. I've started dating again, carefully, not because I'm trying to fill a void, but because I know what I won't tolerate anymore. I've also helped a few friends through their own complicated breakups. I don't give advice unless they ask, but when they do, I tell them this. If someone makes you feel like you're crazy for noticing distance, trust that instinct. If they gaslight you into thinking you're overreacting, take a step back. And if your relationship starts to feel like a performance, like you're a supporting actor in someone else's script, start paying attention, because the moment you stop participating in their narrative is the moment you take your power back. That's what I did, not with rage, not with revenge, but with quiet, calculated truth. And in the end, that's all I needed.